It's been one entire year since Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, hit theaters. People were all over the map with their opinions on this final chapter in the sequel trilogy, in the Star Wars saga as a whole. Some folks call it garbage, while others praise it as a spectacular end. As for myself, just like the Bendu, I'm the one in the middle. And I personally will never find this film to be a masterpiece or a piece of garbage. Like I said last year, The Rise of Skywalker is still just okay. My expectations for The Rise of Skywalker were basically just to complete Kylo Ren, Rey, and Finn's arc in very unique ways rather than a mashup or a retread of the themes we already explored in the two previous films, especially given how The Last Jedi finished. It opened up such a big opportunity for JJ to prove himself to finally have a fully realized creative vision for the end of the saga. Unfortunately, what we got, as far as I'm concerned, is the Force Awakens approach, which tells the same story we already know, but cleverly disguises it in a kind of new narrative, but where the Force Awakens at least had some breathing room. The Rise of Skywalker felt like 100 vignettes that paid homage to the original trilogy in its most distilled form. What's equally strange about this is how many interesting ideas The Rise of Skywalker brought forward into canon. We had this quest regarding holocrons, which would lead Kylo Ren and Rey to an unknown world of the Sith. Neat. We had Rey having visions of her as heir to the Sith, sitting on the throne, struggling with the dark side. Amazing. There was a Stormtrooper rebellion. We also learned that the voices Kylo had heard when conversing with the Helmet of Vader, all those inner dark thoughts and temptations, was Palpatine. And I also thought that the dyad itself was an incredible idea to be added into canon because for the first time we saw an extremely unique use of the Force that actually felt like a natural extension from the previous film. Soulmates in the Eyes of the Force was an incredible idea as far as I'm concerned, so yeah, I like that. Another interesting idea was Leia's ability to guide her son back to the light with one moment of unconditional love. And finally, I thought it was fascinating that Kylo Ren would redon the mask based on JJ's admission that this was all based on Kintsugai. And as a Kylo stan, I thought that this moment would carry a lot of weight throughout the film. All of these things seemed like incredible ideas in my eyes for the final chapter. It paid off some threads that fell to the wayside regarding The Force Awakens while also honoring some of the best ideas in The Last Jedi. However, with all that said, every single idea presented in this film is either rushed or astoundingly hollow upon reflection. And I think the best way to explain this is to work through some scenes that best explain exactly what I'm getting at. But don't worry, I do have positives about this film, and at the end I'll discuss those. And when I say positives, I mean things that I actually truly love about The Rise of Skywalker. But let's start with the mess. Number 1, Mustufar. The opening of The Rise of Skywalker initially felt like a music video to me. Quick pan down, ties fly over, smash cut to Kylo Ren in a mosh pit with people we've never seen before, 15 seconds of battle, Kylo finds a triangle of hope with eerie whispers, and then it fades to arguably a few hours later where Kylo's navigating a nebula until he reaches some destination that the triangle of faith has stored inside of itself. So stopping there for a second, there is no context to what is happening. It's exciting to watch, for sure, and I definitely warmed up to this intro, but still, as a viewer, I want to know what the hell is going on, and why it's going on, and what the stakes are. The novel for this book paints a better picture of the why behind the opening scene. The First Order has been following Supreme Leader Kylo Ren on his wild quest to find Palpatine, but he needs a device to achieve this. These ideas were also filmed in initial cuts of the movie and opening, so that we knew what Ren was up to, while also discovering that some folks find Kylo Ren to be on a fool's errand. And the most insane thing this introduction leaves out is information regarding Kylo Ren's destiny. We all know about the Oracle scene being cut from the movie, but it's in that scene that we get our first hint at Kylo's redemption if he continues down his current path. That creature on Mustufar told him that he would find his true self in the end. And all of this is happening on the planet of his grandfather's downfall, becoming a Sith. It should have all felt outrageously important, but it didn't because we didn't know what was happening. So to sum that up, it's as if JJ decided to cut around everything imaginable to just get us to Palpatine as fast as possible. As if he was worried we would get bored by context in slower portions of this opening sequence. And I say, mistake. Number 2, Exegol. Kylo Ren's time on Exegol also felt rushed. We see this enormous citadel, which was highly intriguing. Most likely that's where everybody in the Sith fleet lived, but we only really learn about what's underneath it. And while the imagery was actually amazing to me, there is no time given to us or the characters to entrench themselves in what is happening around them. There was no Kylo landing on the planet shot, and actually that's a problem that occurs throughout the entire film. And he's not curious about his surroundings, even when he's walking through that underground temple. Like, Kylo had no time to take a look at that 300-foot statue of a Sith Lord and go, wow, nothing. And when he's finally confronted with an almost dead clone of Palpatine, the explanation we get for how Palpatine is back is reduced to a nostalgia bait line from Revenge of the Sith.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
For me, it's not enough. It's just random. And this is coming from a guy who actually likes creepy half-dead clone Palpy, because it reminds me of old school horror movies. Palpatine tells Kylo that he was the one that orchestrated all the events of the sequel trilogy, for the most part, and stoked Ren's darkness. And again, no real reflection upon the idea that you were never actually talking to your grandfather's Sith spirit, as well as the fact that you murdered your father at the demand of a gold-robed puppet. And this all kind of undermines Kylo's arc in the trilogy too. Kylo kills his father to prove to his master and himself that he is committed to the dark side, yet it shows that he is not fully committed due to his destabilized nature afterwards. And then this is even discussed in the first scene with Kylo in The Last Jedi. He failed, right? So again, he's trying to prove himself. And then he fails again, but this time it's with snuffing out his mother. And then he murders Snoke so that he can finally be in charge of himself and his destiny, regardless of how emotionally volatile he is. And to add to this, the fact that Kylo Ben Solo never directly made the choice on his own to become allied with the dark side seemed to fall to the wayside as well. There's zero reflection in The Rise of Skywalker regarding what Luke Skywalker did to Kylo in The Last Jedi, and how Luke kind of forced Kylo Ren's choice in a way. The Sith, the Jedi, let it all die, right? Let Kylo Ren become something more, like something in Duel of the Fates maybe. But nope, reduced back to a Vader, wanting to destroy the Emperor kind of deal again, with Kylo wanting Rey to join him to rule the galaxy, which again was already a plot point that was dealt with in the previous movie. And I actually have no problem with the Sith fleet, however, I think it was a bad creative choice to make it seem like Palpatine used the Force to lift 10,000 Star Destroyers into the atmosphere, showing off his Sith fleet. If I had control, those would have already been the first thing that Kylo Ren saw when he touched down on the planet of Exegol. All 10,000 Star Destroyers already in position in the atmosphere. And honestly, I think originally, the edit of Palpatine's hands showing that one little tiny spark of Force lightning was to demonstrate just how broken he is inside of that failed clone body, versus him just conjuring Star Destroyers. Again, this whole sequence seemed to cut around context in a natural unfolding of information to our main characters. And just to really double down on my point here, this scene ends with kill the girl, end the Jedi, and become what your grandfather Vader could not. But Kylo did that already, hence my frustrations with this final arc in this movie. If I had to make a guess, I don't think JJ knew how to get to the end of the movie without restarting Kylo Ren's story in some form. So it is what it is. Next up, the Falcon. The Falcon scene in the mining colony is the most aggressive example of having zero moments of pause to create tension. Everything looks great, the cinematography is outstanding, but the pacing is bizarre. In the span of 2 minutes, Poe, Chewie, and Finn meet up with Boolio, and we have no idea why they are heading there, but basically Boolio told them off-screen, we find this out in the novel, that he had some important thing that the Resistance would need, and then Poe and everybody showed up. It would have been nice to spend a bit of time there regarding the data transfer going on, versus the second the data transfer begins, the First Order shows up. We literally see Finn plug into R2, and then like 100 TIE fighters roll in, and then we cut back to Poe saying, "They gotta go." Finn says, "They're almost there," and then boom, they're done and escaping the scene. And I think that we need moments when these heroes feel kind of safe for a bit, and then nope, they're alerted to enemies, so they need to speed things up, and then they end up escaping at the last minute. The edit in this existing movie is so fast that it's as if the TIEs were tailing the Falcon the entire time. And the other thing is the placement of this scene within the context of the film as a whole. At the very least, this should have been the third sequence in the film. After Kylo heard some information regarding who Rey is, which was really obvious.
You are a Palpatine.
It should have cut to Rey on Agent Kloss. It feels more fluid to me. And that sequence ends with people claiming they haven't heard anything from the Falcon in some time. So you now cut to the Falcon and boom, you have a really solid sequence of events. So regarding Rey and her training sequence, I fully understand the limitations regarding Leia in The Rise of Skywalker, and arguably this was the first domino that led to the rest falling, creating this wacky experience of a movie. But no one could control that, and no one is to blame for that, so part of me also forgives so much of this film based on that one fact. With that said, why is Rey's training so coked out and the music so damn fast that it feels accidental? Sure, it was very cool to see how far Rey has come, but to be frank, it was again like this music video montage where it would have been nice for some slowdown, similar to when Rey contends with the training remote. And lastly, the vision sequence here during Rey's training is astoundingly cheap. In The Force Awakens, JJ and his team created one of the most visually stunning things ever, a forceback vision. But due to the insane time constraints of The Rise of Skywalker, JJ did a rapid-fire smash cut with some changes to the color correction on top of some sound design. It's like an entry-level editing technique, and tragically utilized, but I do like what JJ was doing regarding Rey and her darkness in this moment. As I said, he has good ideas, but a very hollow execution of them. So to wrap up this section of the video, I think the opening scenes themselves have the most egregious issues regarding the film. The lack of context, the rushed pacing, and the organization of scenes was pure bantha-poodoo. Now, this next part of this video pertains to dialogue, and I'm not saying Star Wars has never had bad dialogue. To say so is to be disingenuous. Even the prior two films had dialogue that made me wince. With that said, The Rise of Skywalker has some hilarious dialogue. For example, the entire debriefing scene regarding how Palpatine returned. It's so bizarre to me. We meet this random dude, Beaumont, who gives another hollow reason for the existence of Palpatine. We then learn that rather than the First Order, this new threat is called the Final Order, and that they have 16 hours to save the galaxy. Then, and I know we're limited on takes here, but Leia doubles down on affirming it's Palpatine operating from the shadows all along, when before she was affirming that it was Snoke operating from the shadows in The Force Awakens. Then the icing on the cake of this is Maz delivering this extremely redundant line.
If we want to stop him, we must find him. We must find Exegol.
Which is, yeah, that's what Poe's getting at, and like already established before you said it. But JJ wanted to show off his awesome animatronics. So cool, right? So hopefully you see what I'm getting at here. The way this scene is constructed is a bit derpy, especially with the inserts of other Resistance folks looking bored or just not even aware of what's happening. And Rey's face acting, which is supposed to tell us, oh, she knows what's going on. It's great and all, but again, it would have been cool to include some of those deleted scenes with that random guy Beaumont who actually helped decode some of the Jedi texts, so that way, you know, as things unfold, we casually learn of some of these names, maybe even see Exegol in the book, and then when it's brought up again, we have context. Now we understand Rey's face. Wow. Now let's talk about something that I was really excited about: the return of Kylo Ren's helmet. Seeing that being rebuilt in the trailer fascinated me because it made me curious about how Kylo Ren now viewed himself and all he has done regarding his evil deeds and his place in the galaxy now that he's supreme leader. Was he accepting every part of himself finally, allowing what was broken inside of him to also equally define him rather than hiding from his failures? It seemed like this redonning of the mask was going to play into The Last Jedi's riff that failing is your best teacher. You can't let the past die. You learn from it. And since JJ stated that this was based on the art Kintsugai, of course I thought this would have meaning. Unfortunately, all the meaning that might have been implied with this scene did not exist in the film, and we just get Kylo standing in a room with his Knights of Ren suddenly there, while a dark side monkey rebuilds the mask with some awesome brooding music underneath. There was no ritual to it, there was no consideration for why he is really redonning the helmet again. It just happens, and then cuts away to a rehash of the conference room scene from A New Hope, and it's just a little bit more intense. So in reality, JJ just brought the helmet back so he could just insert new lines as needed and get new takes. And I really wished that there was some thought put into the reforging of this, because there was a lot of thought put into the breaking of Kylo Ren's mask. In The Last Jedi, the helmet proves what Kylo hides, his emotions, and Snoke plays on that until he smashes it to pieces. Now, I think the best way forward from here, because I could basically do this forever with every scene in this movie, is to discuss maybe the biggest issue I had with this movie beyond the obvious problems that 10,000 other YouTubers already made videos about. This film ironically has a Luke problem. The problem is that The Rise of Skywalker doesn't acknowledge what Luke did on Crait in any meaningful way whatsoever. Luke saved the Resistance, and this tale of his standoff with the First Order was shown to have traveled across the galaxy at the end of The Last Jedi. The myth was back, and it has inspired people. In The Rise of Skywalker, what they acknowledged was Luke being wrong and retreating to the island. And that's it. Of course, Luke was on Ahch-To out of fear and shame, but he also overcame it. So reducing Luke's role in The Rise of Skywalker to Diet Kenobi Ghost, who briefly talks about why he was wrong again in the previous film, while not acknowledging that he pulled off arguably the most Jedi thing ever in the history of Star Wars, is a tragedy. It's insane. Luke's legacy in The Rise of Skywalker was just a fetch quest, and then he raises an X-Wing out of the water, which actually I do enjoy now, but it's insane that his story of facing down the whole First Order wasn't the thing that inspired the galaxy from the get-go to help the Resistance defeat the Final Order. You know what I'm saying? I have to imagine that this creative choice was conscious, but it's also possible again that JJ had no idea how to handle Luke, since it was also confirmed that this entire Ahch-To sequence was basically created in reshoots. Now, to wrap up this highly critical section of the video, I think upon reflection that it's strange that the First Order became a secondary foe for the finale. And this is because of Palpatine magically coming back. One of the best things that never happened could have been a Stormtrooper rebellion led by Finn, and that was tossed aside for a throwaway line by a new character we know nothing about. Apparently, some of these Stormtroopers did rebel, but off screen, and now they ride horses. Still pretty cool looking though. And the threat of the Sith fleet never felt like a threat. We had no reason to fear them, and seeing one ship blow up Kijimi didn't make me go, wow, that's nuts. It made me go, wow, they just destroyed a planet again. Jesus Christ. And then this new threat is destroyed the first day they ever engaged with the galaxy, which makes Palpatine's 30-year plan hilarious. 16 hours later, after he announces his thing, he dies. Okay, so that's it for the negative stuff. Now we're switching to positives. Given the constraints of this film, which was how long JJ and Terrio had to craft a script, figure out how to keep Leia in the movie, and finish a 9-chapter story, I think he actually did the best he could. And the fact Leia is even in this film was incredible to me as a fan. Making her a Jedi of sorts and a master was a bit strange, but also satisfying since Carrie really passed away in real life. So having her in that position was a beautiful way to honor the character in the person. To pivot off that, one of the most magical scenes in the film is a flashback to Return of the Jedi Luke and Leia training on Ancient Cloths. This was supposed to actually kick off the film long ago, but was moved to the Ahch-To sequence. And I can't explain why, but that brief flashback made me feel like I was a 5-year-old kid again, seeing some secret scene from the original trilogy. And it was so visually pleasing to me, and the saber combat was insane that honestly, I'll never forget that scene. It's iconic to me. Another thing I loved was Kylo Ren's actual self-reflection after being stabbed and healed by Rey. While it was a bit tough to take away exactly what Leia did, it boils down to forcing Kylo Ren to feel her love regardless of his transgressions. And the subsequent healing doubles down on the point that maybe he isn't lost to the dark side after all. Maybe, possibly, there is hope for him. I like it. And then when his father shows up, even though we know this is basically just a conversation taking place within Kylo's head, it unfolds beautifully. It's a play on the scene of Han's death in Starkiller Base, and Kylo finally realizes that even in Han Solo's final moments, he loved his son. He loved Ben. And if you think that's cheesy, I guess you dislike the power of love. But that's the cornerstone of Star Wars. Kylo imagining his father caressing his face again and then saying "Dad" out loud actually made me tear up as he teared up. And it was clear to me that once he tossed his saber into the ocean, the conflict was over, and he allowed Ben, the persona he kept pushing way down, to resurface and to do one final heroic act to save the galaxy from darkness like he had been saved from darkness. And I also really love when Ben Solo shows up on Exegol. Without saying any words besides "ow," Ben Solo captivated me. I loved how much like his father he was in these sequences. He's tall, he's lanky, with a bit of that snark with his body language. And the lightsaber handoff through space and time was a great in-camera effect. At least that's how I think they did it. I loved it. It's simple and powerful. And seeing Ben don Anakin's saber finally after 3 films, it was incredible. Ben laying waste to the pointless Knights of Ren was also fantastic, because Ben Solo is still feral, but he's just amazing to watch. And some might strongly disagree with me here, for those who dislike this movie a ton, but Ben saving Rey the way that he did really works for me. The Force at its core is not some educational system where you rise through the ranks and get master's degrees to prove you can wield it. You know, that's how a lot of fans think of this stuff nowadays. So scientific about it. That wasn't the intent. In A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, the Force is in all things, and all you need to do is trust and believe in the Force. Ben healing Rey by believing he can also do it because he has witnessed it was great. It doubled down on the old point of view of the Force, making it a bit mysterious again rather than a power-up video game achievement. And yes, Ben Solo passing away hurt my heart, but I can't see any other rational way to end his arc. And I don't believe in all those sentiments that this end was problematic whatsoever. I don't think it plays into some narrative or something. It's not how my brain works. It's a fantasy movie, so get over it. Finally, the score. The Rise of Skywalker has the best score of the sequel trilogy, and is my second favorite score next to Attack of the Clones, which is actually my least favorite Star Wars film. So even though I find The Rise of Skywalker to be frustrating and fun at the same time, the score kind of makes up for it all, regardless of things not really making sense, you know? So that's it. The Rise of Skywalker is a film that exists. It's still good enough and fun enough for me to enjoy myself, as long as a large part of my brain is turned off. And honestly, I think nowadays too many folks look at Star Wars as this piece of like high art, when to be frank, it's exactly as Lucas framed it. It's movies for kids, about good and bad, with a Saturday morning adventure series vibe. Not everything makes sense in Star Wars, and not everything will going forward. So for like the 4 people that made it to the end of this video, tell me down below in the comments how you feel about TROS now, 1 year later. And even if you completely disagree with everything I said, that's fine. My biggest hope after all these movies is that by being untethered from the main story, the main saga, now Lucasfilm can focus on just telling the most solid single movie they can, rather than trying to recreate the wheel over and over and over and over. If I see another planet blow up by a super weapon, I'm gonna jump out a window. So, as always, may the Force be with you. AT-AT is signing off.